Hello everybody, my name is Mark Sage. I'm the Executive Director of the area, the AR for Enterprise Alliance, and welcome to our latest in a long line of webinars that we've done to help the ecosystem. I think this is a really interesting subject. I know something as a new industry, companies and individuals are really focused on and interested how they can secure investment. So I'll be making an introduction to our expert today, but just want to give you a quick introduction to the area. Next slide, please, Colton. And so the area is a global membership-funded, not-for-profit alliance helping to accelerate the adoption of enterprise AR. And we do that in numerous different ways. And we have been working for a number of years. If we go to the next slide, please. And to give you an idea of kind of our members, they're in three different segments. Enterprises that are deploying AR within their organizations. And again, we see that across all sorts of different industries. And I know this is something that Colton is going to be talking about in the webinar. We have providers of AR, both from a hardware and a software perspective. And we also have a number of non-commercial organizations, which are made up of government agencies, research institutes, universities, and standards organizations. Next slide, please, Colton. And so what we do, we boil it down to what we call our four strategic pillars. The first one is about delivering thought leadership. It's about the information that business decision makers need to invest in AR and also to help the providers grow their businesses. So we tend to focus on four things. That is the problems that can be solved using AR, the use cases, examples of those problems being solved in real life and being able to demonstrate those, the case studies, what technology is needed, and most importantly, the ROI. And I know when it comes to getting investment, showing a clear ROI and sales performance is really important. The next is about bringing the ecosystem together. It's about learning from each other, sharing those best practices, gaining insights, and really helping you understand how to successfully deploy the technology. The third is around educate and closing the AR skills gap, which really means about bringing the next set of skilled workers to the industry. So we work with universities and educational organizations to help define what AR courses could look like, create guest lecturing for the members, outplacements and things like that. And then finally, it's about reducing barriers to adoption. We see across the globe lots of companies that are doing pilots and proof of concepts, but that's not always turning into full deployments. So we've created a number of committees which allows the members to come together and focus on some of these barriers and help overcome them. This is the kind of scope of the work that we do inside the area. Next slide, please, Colton. I mentioned before that this is one of the many webinars. In fact, we've done over 40 in the years. So I would ask you to reach out to the area website and go to the resources and videos and webinars page. Lots and lots of great information in there on a wide range of different subjects that we know through the feedback are really helping organizations understand and developing the kind of best practice in AR. Next slide. And finally, we're obviously on the webinar today, but we've got two more before the end of this year. We're having another kind of a case study one where we talk with one of our area members, Theorem Solutions, but also the work they're doing with another area member, Medtronic in Valiant, about getting AR to work within their organization. So very much a kind of a case study. And then finally, the last one in the year, we'll be talking about a consortium that's working in the space as well. Next slide, please. So before I hand over to Colton, who will introduce himself, just a reminder, if you have any questions, please put them into the questions box within your GoToMeeting panel here, GoToWebinar panel. Colton will be very happy to answer any of them at the end. And if we don't have time, we'll certainly come back with some feedback as well. So it just leaves me to hand over to Colton, who will introduce himself. And I'm looking forward to hearing about your work. Colton, over to you.
Appreciate that, Mark. So yeah, first off, I just want to thank Mark and Area for putting this together and just giving the opportunity to present some of this work that we put together here. So Just to set the table for the webinar, I'll give a little bit of background about Oaklins and myself, and then move on to the analysis that we put together, which should hopefully, shed some light on the state of the augmented reality industry. Briefly touch on the core info in that, and then dive deeper into enterprise and just some of what's happening in that space. We'll follow that up with some case studies, and then a brief overview of ODP's processes and how investors look at viewing value in a company. I'm sure the analysis will be available online afterwards, but if not, just email me and I'll be happy to send you a copy. So yeah, just keeping it high level for the intro. Oaklins is a network of international banks. So we have 65 different banks across 45 different countries. We work on sell sides, buy sides, capital raises. So we don't invest directly, but we have a vast network of investors and industry operators, as well as a large global footprint. In New York City, Oaklins DeSilva+Phillips is the global specialist for TMT, and we specialize in a lot of sectors where AR will have the biggest impact. So that's technology, media, marketing, advertising, healthcare, education. And we've been working on an industry analysis for the augmented reality space, and we've identified it as just an area that will have a flurry of investment and M&A activity in the coming years. So just quickly on myself, I received my bachelor's in economics and philosophy from the University of Chicago. While there, did stints in private equity and wealth management, and was part of a data-focused startup that I co-founded. After graduating, got a job at ODP, which is Oaklins DeSilva+Phillips, and I've been here for 4 years. I'm currently vice president, focused on sell sides, buy sides, and capital raises for TMT, in addition to working closely with one of our partners and heading up the AR practice. Okay, so that's me and Oaklins in a very small nutshell. And now we can move into some of the more interesting information surrounding AR. Okay, so market opportunities. So there's obviously been significant investment into AR recently, and we believe that will continue to be the case moving forward. You can see a global market size of around 17.7 billion in 2020, estimated to grow at a 44% CAGR. So that 2028 number is obviously very large and remains far out. Personally, not a fan of predictions that go out that far, but the data is strong, and as we flesh out this report, we'll hopefully see why that figure seems achievable. Within those figures, North America has been dominant and expected to stay there in the short term, just due to a bunch of heavy hitters that are US based. Regionally, Europe and APAC are expected to see significant growth over the period, with APAC growing slightly faster due to a larger population and honestly just a rise of more enterprise focused and labor intensive jobs. Another factor is everyone's favorite topic, coronavirus, which obviously COVID forced companies to adopt a digital infrastructure, which in its own way paves the way pretty nicely for enterprise AR to take off. And then you have additionally recent augmented reality hype from Facebook changing its name to Meta, grabbing a lot of headlines and pushing investor focus towards the metaverse. And I hope my lack of picture here doesn't detract from my air quotes, but there's been a lot of talk around the metaverse recently, and that's driving investor eyeballs to the space. So just taking a step back, the market is at a position right now where a variety of industries are contributing to that growth, and enterprise is really the one driving the demand. So with the amount of deployable capital right now and venture capital firms at all-time highs, and just that mixed with investors looking into AR and VR, we believe it's smart to at least gauge the market right now and begin conversations with investors, if not just to contextualize where your company stands within the broader landscape. Okay, adoption flow. So this is how we see the adoption cycle for new technologies. Starting at the discovery phase where the tech is created, and then moving to innovation, you start to see subtle outline of use cases that define how the tech will take hold from both an enterprise and consumer standpoint. And then stability is brought on by standardization within the industry. Standardization here can refer to technical components as well as business models. So standardization of optical components, hand tracking, head-mounted displays, etc. Just technology that allows a base for other companies to build upon. And then we believe that where we are now is refinement. So as use cases become more clearly defined, the positives to adoption become more apparent, and investors are driven to the space to realize returns. So this all causes, a boom in the number of companies and competing products. It's essentially, proven returns plus hype drive more capital to the space, and the M&A landscape becomes ripe for consolidation. And then we have disruption, but that's a few years out, and you will know disruption when you see it. So what is driving this adoption? So high level, I'll touch on all these, but we can leave this section as more of a leave behind. But there are 7 factors that we've identified as just being key in driving adoption for AR. So I'll just briefly step through these in the next few slides. First one is LiDAR. I'm sure that everybody listening to this, if not mostly everybody, understands what LiDAR is. But LiDAR is essentially, it's key in creating detailed depth maps for augmented reality. And it's not exactly new technology, but we are seeing it become more widespread in your typical handheld devices. So just given that AR in its current form is coming through mobile phones and handheld devices, better and cheaper LiDAR sensors mean that your average person will have access to the technology and a powerful AR device in their pocket. 5G. Okay, so 5G is key to creating good experiences, right? Everybody hates slow, clunky experiences. So 5G networks will offer lower latency, reduce friction, provide better bandwidth, and a lot of compute will be offloaded to the cloud. So we'll experience enhanced video quality, better live streaming, better renderings of shared environments, and in the same vein, developers will be able to create higher quality content, which positive network effects will drive users to AR platforms. So because more compute will be cloud compute, this again makes mobile handheld devices more powerful AR hardware. And so we're kind of seeing a trend here, right, without people even knowing that they're purchasing them, of having powerful handheld AR devices in their pockets. Another area that we believe is ripe for disruption here is data, right? So we're living in a society that has an abundance of data, and so much data that companies have massive data lakes with no way of really synthesizing what lies underneath. And I don't know how many are familiar with this, but there's this biological principle that we discuss that states human beings can process visual information 60,000 times faster than text, and we believe that AR really capitalizes on this in order to more effectively make sense of that abundance of data. So there's really 2 ways that we see this being transformative. The first is digital twins. So with Internet of Things and many of our devices having sensors today, it's easy to create digital twins that represent a physical object in the virtual world. Manipulation of the digital 3G object is much easier than manipulating the physical thing, and comes at a much lower cost. Second, we see is data visualization. So this is really just taking large swaths of data and representing them in a 3D format, which will save time and increase efficiency for both individuals and companies. And just a note on this one, as a spreadsheet jockey myself, I've spent a fair amount of time working with pivot tables in Excel, and large data sets just take so much time to navigate and are inefficient without the correct tools. So just speaking with some of the companies that provide these solutions and demoing their platforms, this is an area that I find particularly fascinating. All right, this one is worth maybe paying a little more attention to, but enterprise is the main driver for AR adoption in the short term, full stop, right? This technology is sufficient enough now that a decent amount of companies have at least put on pilot programs. And the nice thing about enterprise adoption is it doesn't need to be perfect and stylish. It just needs to effectively hit the bottom line. And enterprises are willing to pay, a higher price for hands-free solutions for their workers. Hands-free enables better safety, especially in industrial settings, and accelerates task completion, reduces errors. Collaborative environments can be created and enhanced in more cost-effective ways. Think like borderless communication with your team on a creative project, or reducing cognitive load by overlaying 3D instructions. So there are many use cases within enterprise that help boost revenues and cut costs, which is pretty fundamental when dealing with budgets and making business decisions. We'll get into that with some case studies later, but important to note now that enterprise will be the largest adopter of AR in the short term. And we believe that the R&D unlocked in enterprise will help refine the technology for the consumer market. So this section builds off the last one, but there are 3 use cases within enterprise that we think will be major drivers. Remote expertise is an obvious short-term implementation for AR. Companies instantly save money on travel, the expert saves time, problems can get fixed instantly, and you can create digital documentation all the while. So this is made possible through line of sight instructions, which is an attractive sticking point for companies and skilled employees. Especially good for generations that will retire en masse, like the baby boomers, that will be incentivized to contribute their knowledge from a cushier spot. This is relatively simple, reliable implementation for enterprise that currently exists today. Skill acquisition is another one that's relatively low-hanging fruit. So the visuals here may not be as high quality as you see in some of these pictures, but the importance is the worker can work through real situations and develop a real-time understanding of how to react. And experience being the best teacher, experience here can be provided at a low cost. In the same vein, you have learning. So humans, as we discussed, typically much better at discerning visual information. And augmented trainings can bring immersive education to workers at a low cost. So the content here is extremely scalable and can be constantly updated and refined. Okay, so using that as a segue for content. So historically, lack of high quality content has been a major obstacle for adoption. And adoption here referring mainly to consumer adoption, right? So 4 creative industries that we believe will drive the creation of content are retail, events, gaming, and entertainment. So retail companies will create experiences to connect with consumers. This will largely come through mobile in the short term. IKEA is a good example here. So they've allowed their customers to visualize what a piece of furniture will look like before actually purchasing it. Little things like that just save the customer time and keep them engaged with the brand. AR can also be used in real live events. So again, this will largely come through mobile, but as the hardware improves, so will the capacity for high quality experiences. And we think this will be a strong traction point for content creation. And then games and entertainment, sort of where AR and VR have their beginnings. As time goes on, the quality of those experiences will get better, and we'll see more adoption by a generation that's digitally native. So high quality content here really coming from an improvement in the hardware and the underlying technical infrastructure. So building upon the other trends that we looked at beforehand. And main point being here is as content becomes better, we'll see some positive network effects take hold in consumers that are driven to AR experiences. And last but not least, and this sort of culmination of all the other trends is strong investment patterns. So here we have, total invested capital in 2020 drastically increasing despite the economic downturn, and enterprise adoption really being the main driver behind that. We're also seeing later stage deals. So the prior year showed a lot of seed and accelerator rounds, and now we're seeing more companies dip into to series rounds as well as more actual sell sides take place. And not shown on this slide, but just data that I've recently looked up is M&A deals for augmented reality are up 50% this year for Q1 through Q3. That's 2021. And series rounds are up 20% in the same time frame. So this trend is continuing on into 2021. And all of these trends align with what we're seeing in the M&A landscape more broadly. So here we just have some recent acquisitions in the space. These next 2 slides I can leave as a leave behind, and you can look through them at your own pace. But these are just recent deals and then some active investors that are in the augmented reality space. All right, and just setting the table on this slide, there were a variety of industry transformation slides in the original analysis that we put together, but here we just pulled out an example slide for industrials. So you can see this nice graph from PwC here that shows the amount of jobs enhanced and the projected boost to GDP, the lion's share of which is being driven by enterprise and specifically industrial enterprise. And again, this is a far out projection, but year-over-year growth figures make this seem pretty on target. The market sentiment you can see here is pretty strong. The market sentiment for the industry as a whole has ebbed and flowed over the past few years, but the enterprise sector has actually remained remarkably consistent as people and companies are just bullish in the implementation of AR in this area. And then below are a few companies we want to spotlight for the enterprise space. We provided these for a variety of industries, so you can look through all these companies and all these industry transformation slides once you receive the full analysis. Okay, so I was gonna move on to case studies next, but actually this morning I was just jotting down some notes. I think it's an idea to maybe address some of the shortcomings with enterprise AR. This talk is meant to highlight the value proposition for enterprise AR, but also I think we need to be honest with the amount of improvement that's needed for a variety of these solutions to become everyday use cases. Well, actually, I don't have any slides for this, but really quickly, there's 3 that stick out to me and 3 that stick out from an investor viewpoint. So I'll just quickly run through those. So first is the lack of AR app design and development standards. So this makes it difficult for companies to adopt solutions and have proven roadmaps for their use. Leads to sometimes experimentation and often confusion, and sometimes can end with reversion to old methods. Right. So first one is lack of AR app design and development standards. Second, potential data leaks. So we have wearables and cloud-based systems that are hosting proprietary and sensitive data in a newish industry. So I'm not sure what the answer to this one is. Maybe it's regulatory oversight, but to the degree that doesn't stifle innovation, it seems like a really easy framing to an impossible task. But ultimately, there will be very granular data points available on people and no tried and true method to protect that data. And then third is this phrase that I've heard thrown around called pilot purgatory. And this is when enterprises bring in AR, but then fail to achieve a critical mass of adoption. Usually a function of poor internal communication and sometimes even tech-averse frontline workers. So, there being no training standards for employees. Also, companies trying to use AR as a silver bullet and implement it into too many different work streams. This can lead to fatigue with AR and employees that feel compelled to kill the program at its pilot stage. So at its current state, it's best used with niche use cases, and that focus really helps get past the litmus test for frontline workers. So in summation, 1, standard of development around training and design. 2, methods to protect sensitive data points. And 3, focusing the product to help get it through pilot purgatory. So as we go through some of these case studies, those may be addressed, and just wanted those to be top of mind. So, all right, on to the case studies. So yeah, sorry if some of these seem a little bit scripted from the onset, but that's because I haven't really fully memorized them, so I'm reading through notes here. But so first one is Porsche. Porsche equipped mechanics with AR glasses for guided maintenance. So this is helping with line of sight instructions for maintenance, and they did this by working with Aether, which is an enterprise AR specialist. So by overlaying AR onto complex instructions, Porsche reduced their service time by 40%. And obviously, there are costs associated with dispatching high-end mechanics. So a 40% reduction in service time is actually a pretty meaningful savings at scale. So this 40% figure is actually a few years old, but the importance for this case study is Porsche renewed its commitment to Aether and actually boosted its AR usage by 3 times. So showing a real value in the ROI that it's received from Aether's products. So this shows that Porsche has overcome the annoyance of pilot purgatory, and workers and management were strategically aligned with the product rollout. So just looking at what Porsche has done right. Porsche rolled out the AR program internally like a marketer. They actually worked with Aether on a campaign literally called Think Like a Marketer, and everything was branded as Tech Live Look. Every press release, analyst briefing, posters, packaging, everything was branded as Tech Live Look. And so this excited frontline workers and made it easy to understand. And just an aside, frontline workers typically they don't care too much about explanations surrounding ROI or unit economics. So the conversation here was framed in terms of, the reduction of cognitive load and the reduction of job strain. And also just another note on this, bottom-up planning gives a sense of ownership and involvement, right? While top-down planning just seems like executives kind of forcing change because quote unquote ROI. So bottom-up planning is an effective way to get frontline workers excited and involved in the implementation of AR products. Another thing Porsche did right was roll the technology out sparingly and strategically where it could have the most impact. Didn't use it as a silver bullet, so it kept the technology within its current parameters. So, excellent job there. Next one we'll look at is Medtronic. So, healthcare is obviously an industry where AR can have many different applications. For those of you that don't know, Medtronic is a large medical device manufacturer, but the company has adopted AR training built through Unity and Reflect to help surgeons improve their mastery of different types of medical equipment. So to set the stage, the rate of medical technology innovation has increased. So the rate at which professionals are proficiently trained on specific devices has become shorter as companies opt to go for the newest tech. So to address that previously mentioned problem, Medtronic implemented digital simulators for surgical training. They use real patients, but without surgery, to use a HoloLens to guide surgeons while they use their equipment. And this is a pretty astonishing stat, but surgeons who practice in the simulator have shown an error rate of 15% in real surgery, while those that don't show an error rate of 82%. So obviously a huge success there for Medtronic. And this success has actually been so big that they implemented AR into manufacturing as well, specifically AR training into manufacturing. So again, this builds off the fact that immersive learning helps get real life reps in and saves costs by reducing the amount of errors during work. And again, Medtronic has kept their use case focused to achieve success in a specific area that plays to the strength of the current AR technology. All right, and then bit of a different use case here, but SAP. So just some context for SAP. SAP has 200 million cloud users globally, and they help businesses run through their enterprise resource planning products. So since 2016, they've been focused on developing AR and VR solutions to help customers extract insights and just enhance the way that SAP data is visualized and understood. So ERP has traditionally been done on mobile devices and computers, but SAP recently developed XR Cloud. So that's a cloud-based platform built on Unity that enables the development of mixed reality applications. And the XR Cloud just makes it easier for Unity developers to integrate SAP data into AR/VR applications. And so normally computers would actually do the job just fine, and they still do in their respective use cases, but SAP identified specific areas where AR can help add significant value. So that is service-oriented tasks, maintenance, and quality inspections of assets for field and factory operators. So really capitalizing here on the idea of smart assets. So 3D or 2D objects that are stored in an SAP system. So if you just follow me through the weeds real quick, but the objects have a scripting logic within them that allows real-time data retrieval and exchange between assets in the SAP system. So a really efficient way for businesses to plan, just given the objects can communicate with each other, and also really cost-effective way to implement their planning by using strategies with digital twins. So the XR Cloud is really actually just the beginning of AR/VR applications for SAP in the workplace. They're working on their first MR application that will use AR as the new standard of work. So a bit of a different way to show how AR is helping an enterprise, but really showcasing the point that the client is able to more efficiently extract critical data insights around their work streams. Okay, so next case study we'll move on to is Toyota, and this is the final one here. We talked about not using AR as a silver bullet, but in some cases there are just exceptions to the rules. And Toyota was an early adopter of AR guided processes, so they've implemented AR in many ways throughout the production process. Some of those just digital engineering, assembly, and a few other stages of the automotive life cycle. But most notably, Toyota creates digital models of the car so engineers can recognize and fix inconsistencies that are usually missed by ordinary inspections. So with an AR-based approach, Toyota creates 3D models of the vehicle and body parts under the hood. And engineers have the ability to vary the model in 3D space and capture a large volume of images to train their machine learning models. The previous method utilized Microsoft Azure, which took approximately 20,000 photos and then 200 hours of time to annotate the photos manually. So with AR, they actually reduced that time to 30 minutes, which is a 400 times speed improvement. Another way that Toyota has saved with AR is making tutorials. So step-by-step tutorials are necessary for service engineers to effectively make repairs. And creating the manuals is both time and resource intensive. In the past, digital work procedure would take up to 10 days and require a graphics engineer to be on site. But now they use Dynamics 365 Guides, which is just a Microsoft XR training platform. And the same task can be done by anyone with basic training in just one day. So yeah, again, this is a 90% time reduction, which is a major time reduction, and then frees up valuable programming time and resources to focus on other tasks. And then just real quickly, some of the other ways that they've implemented AR is remote service. So connecting field engineers and experts using the HoloLens 2 to enable participants to communicate and collaborate remotely. Design, so Toyota undergoes something called computational fluid dynamics, and this helps them assess things like the aerodynamics of the car and how the car channels liquids like rainwater. And with AR, the technician can actually navigate around a stationary vehicle and analyze how different design components affect those factors. And then just reducing mistakes in field service. So the use of AR when doing something like figuring out proper electrical configurations instead of looking at 2D diagrams. So those are just some of the many ways that Toyota is implementing AR into their production process. So hopefully that covers a variety of different use cases for AR and enterprise and how it can be a very versatile technology. And yeah, what we really wanted to demonstrate from that is successful use cases in areas where investors have their eyes focused for enterprise AR. So from an investor viewpoint, and Mark said this at the beginning, but it really comes down to ROI. As an investor, I'd be looking at any decision I make with the mentality of, how can I get the company to grow as fast as possible with stability, of course. But from there, you have two mentalities, right? So one is the strategic mentality. So this would be more applicable to a company trying to purchase another company. Strategic buyers will look for the ability to roll the company into their business and further integrate with their current operations. Whereas an investor or a financial buyer will potentially be looking to make an exit 5 years down the road. Both will assess the business differently, but there are an overlap in the qualities that drive value and stand out. So on this slide, you can see different value creators and reducers from an investor perspective. I'm not going to go through all those, but definitely feel free to look through these at the end of this. But I will just say, yeah, making your business attractive to investors is really actually about, in my opinion, marrying two different narratives. So one is quantitative and the other is qualitative, right? So for the quantitative, there's been a real shift to focus on specific data points. So having strong metrics, growth rate, margins, EBITDA margins if it's a service model, gross margins if it's SaaS, churn rates, so customer turnover, that's important, right? On the qualitative side, the narrative behind the company is also extremely important. So who's the management team? Who's the competition? Does the company have a viable path to beat the competition? And how scalable are the products? And what's the room for growth? So just really buttoning up that narrative, right? And vision for the company is also important. So does the management have a vision, and do they have the ability to execute that vision? So all in all, just some important aspects here that any company should really focus on, and these will certainly come up in conversations with investors. And before you begin any conversations with investors, I'd at least consult this list and make sure you have answers surrounding these specific factors. So now I will make just a quick necessary plug for ODP that will also hopefully double in helping you understand what a process would look like. So as I said in the beginning, ODP can help offer services for buy side, sell side, and capital raises. We don't directly invest, but we broker, so our leverage is within our network of buyers, investors, relationship, and large global footprint. So constantly working with our partners overseas, always running a joint process with them in some way or another. So we work together pretty seamlessly. Standard process would typically have to meet our criteria. So typically for sell side, that would be anywhere from 25 million onwards. For Series A, or for a capital raise, is typically a Series A, but those are flexible. We look at each on a case-by-case basis. We have a pretty extensive team that leads the deal. So all of our managing directors have spent decades operating in their respective industries, so they have deep relationships and knowledge in those industries. And they'll typically be the ones leading the assignment and doing outreach. We also have a roster of 20 or so senior advisors that bring tangential industry expertise that we tap in anytime we need their assistance to get more familiar with any industry. And then we have a dedicated team of analysts and associates that create all the documentation and help with the financial modeling. So just leave these next slides as the leave behinds. And if anyone's interested in learning more, just please reach out and I'd be happy to chat. And yeah, that's the contact info for the AR team. So, please reach out if you have any additional questions.
Fantastic. Thank you, Colton. And again, just a reminder for the people on the call, if you've got any questions, please pop them into the questions box. Let me just make sure there's none in there first. No. Okay, I had, firstly, thank you very much. That was really great. It's great to hear so many of the area members as well. You mentioned quite a few that are area members. Just again, on some of the work that the area is doing, I think you identified some of the barriers to adoption around kind of standards, security, and the term pilot purgatory, which myself and the president of the area, Paul Davis, is definitely going to claim, because we've been using that for a number of years. But you're happy under trademark, Colton, to use it. My kind of question was a little bit more about, you showed some interesting stuff about companies being bought by other companies. Have you got any kind of insights on those purchasing decisions? Is it around kind of buying technology or buying capability or customers or just adding to their portfolio? Yeah. Any insights on that?
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be very buyer specific, right? So you have traditional large retail companies now that would traditionally have no experience or business in technology, acquiring AR companies to bring them in-house, just as a more engaging way to just engage with their client base, right? So you have companies like Sephora that are buying AR technology, traditionally like a cosmetics manufacturer. So really that drives buying decisions, right? So bringing capabilities in-house, obviously filling strategic gaps would spur purchasing decisions. So just, if a company is focusing on developing some sort of AR landscape and really needs to fill the gap of machine learning or something, right? So really just trying to fit the strategic gap. But really it's going to be very buyer specific in how they decide to add value within that purchase.
Okay, yeah, because there was a number of what I would call AR companies already there buying other AR companies, albeit potentially in a different part. One bit I find is quite difficult in the industry so far is that we have quite often a separation between hardware and software. So companies that bring that together and provide a solution, which is what the enterprises, the purchasers need, is really important. So do you see that consolidation continue to happen? Or do you think we'll always have this the hardware and software split?
Yeah, I think we're seeing just empirically more consolidation happen. But I think just with successful business models like Apple being shown forward, right? Like the consolidation of hardware and software is very attractive for companies. It really comes down to, do you have the resources to actually make that happen? Because it's a difficult thing to do, to create both your own hardware and your own software, and just close that full stack and make it all work properly. So if the capability is there and the option is there, I think most companies will go after it. You know, it really comes down to, do you have the capital and the backing behind you to be able to execute that?
Okay, that's fair enough. And you've had a little bit kind of a one or two pieces of information for startups in the space. We have some amazing startups that are doing really good work. If they would looking for investment, what would be your kind of top two things that they should focus on to help get that investment?
Yeah, focus on, you know, really, like I said, I think the most important thing that investors look at is marrying both that quantitative and qualitative story.
Mm-hmm.
So, financially, really, before you even have conversations with investors, getting your books just tightened up, and making sure that, you know, everything is in order and makes sense. And then really thinking through, like, what is the long-term vision for the company? What is you know, like, what are the steps that you need to execute that vision? And really just thinking through, you know, all those factors that I listed out, and just, you know, how to have those answers around those certain factors just like tightened up as much as possible. So I think, in short, if I could circumnavigate my own rambling there, would be marrying the quantitative and the qualitative narratives for the company, and really having that story buttoned up, because when it comes to investors, you're selling an idea.
Okay, fantastic. And just a final one, you kind of showed a list of companies that you've seen invest in AR. I assume that list is growing. Can you perhaps put some insights onto that? And is that across the globe, or, you know?
Yeah. So that was actually the list that I showed was actually just top investors, right? So investors that are extremely active in the space. If you look at the number of investments over the past 5 years, all of the top 10 of those investors had anywhere from 20 to 60. So there are definitely a ton of other investors in the space globally that are investing in AR right now. So it's not just the 10, not just the 10 on that page.
Okay, that's great. And you can help connect with those, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Okay, not seeing any other questions in the questions box. I'm going to bring the webinar to a close. Colton, thank you very much for your insights, and thank you for people attending. And what I will be doing, everybody, is sending out, Colton just tell me if this is right, but sending out the report that you have created. And obviously this webinar will be up on the area website and made available as well. But some really great information there. And yeah, as Colton said, any kind of questions or follow up on that, please feel free to contact him.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark.
Yep, thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day, everybody. Thanks for listening. Cheers, goodbye.